I don't think people even know about celiac disease because I have questions like, what's your take on celiac disease? And I'm like, it's pretty well known as a real thing.
This is On Nutrition, a podcast from Mayo Clinic where we dig into the latest nutrition trends and research to help you understand what's health and what's hype. I'm Tara Schmidt, a registered dietitian with Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. This episode, grains and gluten. Believe it or not, these terms aren't mutually exclusive. Not all grains contain gluten, and not all gluten-containing items are grains. So do we actually need to eat grains? Why does gluten seem to affect people differently? And is the gluten overseas healthier than what we have here in the US? Here to help us understand the grainscape is Gabrielle Palmeri, a dietitian and nutrition influencer. She helps clients and followers alike find the root cause of their digestive issues and meet their fiber goals with or without gluten. Hey, Gabrielle.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Okay, if I can be completely transparent, you are someone that I follow on the social media. So I'm a little bit like, oh my gosh, I'm interviewing a celebrity today. You're like a fiber dietitian celebrity, whether you like it or not.
Fiber dietitian. I love it. That's funny.
You are also a self-proclaimed fiber freak, your words, not mine. But I don't think a lot of people make the connection between fiber and grains, or fiber and gluten as an example of one. What is your relationship, or how did you get into this topic? And how does fiber play a role in the world of grains?
I was always interested in gut health because I feel like everyone has IBS and other GI issues. And there's a lot of different food allergies or intolerances that have developed over time too for people. So I really wanted to learn more about it because I love being able to understand things and really help people get to the root cause of things. So then I started working in GI health, where I worked with a lot of newly diagnosed celiac patients or inflammatory bowel disease patients, different GI surgeries, different intolerances or IBS-like symptoms that no one really could understand where they were coming from. And then I went outpatient because I wanted to do my own practice where I had the time to sit down with people and really help them get to the root cause. And I was really fascinated with the idea of gut health and understanding. We've been hearing about colon cancer on the rise, and there's more and more research coming out on the importance of fiber. Mm-hmm. And something that people always ask me when they're trying to eat more fiber is, well, if I'm gluten-free, how am I supposed to get enough fiber in? I always say there's 5 fiber groups just to help people remember. So I say like the first one's whole grains, beans and legumes, mm-hmm. nuts and seeds, fruits and veggies. I call it the fiber 5. So within each of those categories, there's a ton of different foods. So there are a lot of grains that contain gluten, but there's also a lot of grains that don't contain gluten. So understanding the distinction can be really helpful for people and eye-opening to help them still get the grain section, still get fiber, even if they are gluten-free.
Yeah, there are many, many options. And if you need to be gluten-free for whatever reason, like that is doable. But I also think it's really confusing when people kind of assume that there's a benefit of being gluten-free, even if you don't have a medical or a health need to do so. And then what are they potentially missing out on that could be in their diet, right?
Yeah, it's easy to miss out on fiber too if they're not aware. I mean, I think awareness in general can be helpful with fiber, but grains do have a lot of fiber in them. And then also different B vitamins. You can become nutrient deficient if you're avoiding it. You need a healthy balance for sure.
Let's get into some definitions, especially for people who aren't completely immersed in this world. What's gluten?
Yeah, gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, rye, and barley. And so if you're thinking about gluten-free diet, there's a ton of grains, but gluten is just a type of protein. It gives bread its elasticity, and sometimes it's in certain breads and sometimes it's not.
What about other grains that don't have gluten?
It's always really important to read the label. And on the label, if it has wheat in it, it's automatically going to say this contains wheat. So other grains that have gluten that you want to be mindful of are couscous, farro, orzo, bulgur bran, and then some gluten-free grains are buckwheat, which people aren't sure of because it has wheat in the name, but that is gluten-free. You'll see a lot of gluten-containing items with almond or cassava flour, garbanzo bean. Quinoa is a super high fiber gluten-free grain that you can incorporate. Same with fava bean or corn, like corn, they'll use that instead.
And we can't talk about gluten without talking about celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease that's triggered by consuming gluten. And gluten isn't just in bread, cereals, or pasta. What are some less obvious sources?
Soy sauce is a really big one. Different gums or different seasonings even. Same with, I always have patients ask their pharmacist because certain food colorings can contain gluten, which is so confusing and weird.
Yeah, and if you have celiac disease, we'd have to worry about cross-contamination, right? I know a dietitian who has someone in their family with celiac disease, and they have these cute little labels that say gluten-free on the toaster and like toaster.
Yeah, even malt comes from gluten, so different chocolate desserts can have gluten in them. And the best thing to do is just learn how to label read when it comes to that, because for instance, malt is in Rice Krispies. So Rice Krispies aren't gluten-free, but then as of when I last checked, Aldi has something called crispy rice. It's a type of cereal and that's gluten-free. So yeah, looking on the label for gluten-free could be really helpful. And then certified gluten-free is taking it an extra step further to make sure there's no cross-contamination at all and it's completely free of gluten. Gluten-free, it's under the threshold of what would cause a reaction for someone that has celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, and then certified gluten-free is like completely free of gluten.
Can we mention, though, if you agree with this, that a packaged food having a label or being labeled gluten-free does not mean that it is superior or healthier than something that contains gluten if clearly you don't have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. So again, for people who can safely consume gluten, a gluten-free product, a gluten-free cookie is not superior to a wheat flour containing cookie. And honestly, maybe higher in calories, maybe higher in sugar, maybe higher in fat, because they want the cookie to taste good. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah. If you take out gluten, sometimes things just don't taste as good, or they don't, not even taste, it's the texture isn't right and it's not going to work. So they have to add in other things like sugar and different additives like gums or other emulsifiers that also can cause GI issues for people. So yeah, it's not necessarily healthier. It really just depends on what the gluten-free product is and what your needs are.
Yes. What's the purpose behind you purchasing that product? So you mentioned celiac disease and gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance. We know that about 1% of the U.S. population has a diagnosis of celiac disease, and about 6 to 10% of people are gluten intolerant. Do you want to explain the differences between these two things?
Someone asked me my take on celiac disease recently, and I was like, well, it's like not really a take because
it's like, a real thing.
It's a thing. It's an autoimmune disease. Yeah, there's no opinion on it. It's an autoimmune condition, which an autoimmune condition is your body is attacking itself. So for people with celiac disease, when they eat gluten, their body recognizes the proteins in gluten as something foreign and something that they should attack. And it does it every time you eat gluten. So our small intestine have these little finger-like projections. They're called villi. And when you eat any nutrient or any food, the nutrients in your small intestine, that's where you're absorbing things. So these villi are going to grab onto the vitamins and minerals that are in different foods. And if you have celiac disease, every time you eat gluten, it's damaging the lining of the small intestine. So it just becomes flatter and flatter and flatter. So they can't grab on to certain vitamins and minerals. So not only do certain gluten-containing grains and other grains, they're filled with different vitamins and minerals like B vitamins. Beyond that, if you have celiac disease and you're eating gluten, it will become more difficult for you to absorb nutrients from other foods as well. So it's kind of a vicious cycle in that case. And then the more you take gluten out, the more healthy your gut lining can become and your small intestine.
And what about gluten intolerance? Is that the same thing as an allergy?
like there's no such thing as a gluten allergy.
Correct.
There's a wheat allergy. You could be allergic to rye and you could be allergic to barley, but most people would just be allergic to wheat. That's one of the common allergens. But a gluten intolerance is you're just sensitive to gluten and you get similar symptoms. A lot of the symptoms can be like bloating, diarrhea, brain fog, fatigue. Some people get really bad migraines, they pass out, and it's not that well understood where a gluten intolerance can come from, but it can also be correlated with other autoimmune conditions. So people that have Hashimoto's, for instance, they might feel better if they take out gluten. There's a certain type of blood test that you do to be diagnosed with celiac disease, and then that comes back negative, but you still feel 10 times better without gluten, then something is up.
Well, and I think we can also compare this. Sometimes I'll say there's a difference between being lactose intolerant, which I think everyone can kind of make that connection, and having a milk allergy, right? Like lactose intolerance, let's not have pizza and a glass of milk on a Friday night. Like, good luck to you. But you're not going to go into anaphylaxis, right? There's a difference with a wheat allergy and with gluten intolerance. And then we also have celiac disease, which is autoimmune, like you said. So there are differences here. And if you truly think you have celiac disease, one, you need to have the gene for it. And they'll even go as invasive in testing as getting a biopsy, esophageal biopsy, to make sure. So this is not like something that we take lightly or that we overdiagnose. There's very clear distinctions between this is an allergy, this is celiac disease. And if you don't fall into one of those categories, you just may be a little bit sensitive, and that's okay. Then you get to decide what level of intake of that item you tolerate, just like people who have lactose intolerance, like probably can tolerate smaller amounts or with other foods, higher fat sometimes. Like we've got options in some cases.
Yeah, and I think it can get confusing a lot of times. Of course, it's doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, but it's awesome that we can actually have diagnoses for wheat allergy. You have actual diagnoses for celiac disease.
Yes.
So you think about it and segment it off and understand like the distinction. It can make a little more sense.
Why do you think some people avoid gluten if they don't have one of the conditions we have just referenced?
I mean, it was a fad for a while. Anytime you see on a label something like gluten-free, sugar-free, low fat, it's just how our brains work. And we think it automatically means it's healthier. I mean, a lot of people do say, oh, I'm gluten-free. And it's become something that's a trend in a way. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of times it is just people aren't fully educated on why certain things are a certain way. And some people might feel better without it. And I think too, a lot of people will take out gluten and that automatically takes out a lot of packaged foods. So it's really hard to be gluten-free and eat anything in a box. Like it's so much easier to just eat all whole grains because it's a hard diet. No one wants to sit in the aisles for hours and read the label. So I think a lot of it comes down to let's just eat whole foods and then you feel better. And that's kind of how it goes.
Dr. Joseph Murray is a renowned physician from Mayo Clinic who even wrote a book on gluten-free diet. And one of the first things I remember is one of the initial pages of the book explains, like, if you have celiac disease, like, please read on. If you have gluten sensitivity, please read on. But if you're reading this just because you heard about a gluten-free diet being better, go eat an apple. Like, instead of going and buying a gluten-free cookie, I would prefer that you just eat an apple instead. Like, you're going to reap even more benefits than, quote, being gluten-free without a necessary reason. Guess what? Apples are gluten-free and they have lots of other good things about them. Fiber included.
Fiber. My favorite word.
Let's talk about the connection between fiber and grains and blood sugar rise, because that's one of the benefits of fiber, I think, that we can talk about.
Yeah. So there's always going to be a stigma behind carbs and gluten. Everything's just, if you think of carbs, you think of gluten, even though there's so many carbs that don't have gluten, and fiber is a carbohydrate. Everything that comes from a carb has fiber in it, but sometimes it's stripped away. So when you're trying to manage your blood sugars, you can still have carbohydrates. A lot of people might go on a low carb diet because they know that carbs increase your blood sugar. But when you look at a carbohydrate, if you look at the label, underneath the label, you'll see sugar and you'll see fiber. So what makes up a carbohydrate is sugar, fiber, and the other part is starch. And sugar and starch can increase your blood sugar, but fiber can't. So adding in more fiber can help with slowing down a spike in your blood sugar. Same with adding in more protein at a meal. So fiber just adds more bulk and helps slow things down. You're going to be eating, let's say, a piece of white bread without any fiber in it. It's going to naturally just go through you faster and make the sugar in your blood increase more quickly. Versus if you were to have a piece of bread with a lot of fiber in it, it's going to go through your body a lot slower. If you think about when you mix in oatmeal, or some people have seen examples online of like chia seeds in water or psyllium husk in water, it forms a gel or a thicker consistency, and that can go in your body slower. So your body is going to not have a spike in blood sugar as much because it's just going to take a longer time to get through you.
Yeah, I was teaching a class and we used to draw like a more of a spike if you were to have a donut and a cup of black coffee versus if you had oatmeal with berries, even a latte, and like a nice little hill. And you know what? Sometimes donuts are part of the gig, and that's okay. But if we're talking about managing blood sugar, one is the better option.
Yeah. Or a donut with some fiber on the side.
Put some strawberries or something. I don't know.
That works too.
Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye, but can also be in unassuming products like soy sauce, gum, seasonings, food colorings, and even the malt in cereals and chocolate. For people with celiac disease, gluten triggers an autoimmune reaction that damages the lining of the small intestine and makes it harder to absorb nutrients. It's a serious condition that requires constant awareness, from reading food labels to watching for cross-contamination in the kitchen. Then there's gluten intolerance or sensitivity. This isn't an autoimmune disorder or an allergy, but it still causes uncomfortable symptoms like bloating, fatigue, or brain fog. Some people cut out the gluten and feel better, but it might not actually be the gluten. More on that later. If you still want to avoid gluten, that's up to you. But going gluten-free doesn't necessarily mean the food is healthier or tastier. And if you don't need to avoid gluten for medical reasons, cutting it out might mean you miss out on important nutrients too. But there's still quite a bit of misunderstanding when it comes to gluten. So let's do some fact-finding and find the grainy truth. All right. Sometimes I hate saying these out loud because they're false and I just hate the words coming out of my mouth. But can we play a round of true or false?
Yes.
Let's do it. Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, in wheat promote weight gain.
That's false because, one, there's a lot of things that can cause weight gain, and weight gain is very complex. You can't say that one thing can cause weight gain, but there's no GMO wheat that is grown in the US. I'm not a GMO expert, but I know that it's a big misconception, and it's false.
According to the dietary guidelines, we should only be eating whole grains.
The dietary guidelines say that 50% of your grains should come from whole grains.
Do you think that number should be higher? I've heard, and I kind of agree that we're going a little soft on people.
I think saying make 50% of your grains whole grain is kind of confusing. Sure. I think it's just, let's encourage people to eat whole grains, or let's encourage them to, if they want to eat maybe white rice, what else can you add to your plate to get more fiber? Because the only reason they're saying whole grains is because of the fiber, because of the vitamins and minerals. But if we add it in elsewhere, that is also very good for you, and it gives you a balanced meal. So I think we should just be telling people to eat more fiber on your plate at every meal. It's
addressed that Americans are not getting enough fiber. And then the food groups are referenced, right? Like the appropriate food groups, like we mentioned, fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes. But it's not called out as much as it probably could be.
I think I see a lot of people on social media commenting and saying things like, oh, well, you just need 50%. And I think it does make people not want to eat as much whole grains because they're like, oh, well, 50%, that's fine. I don't have to eat that much.
That's the minimum, folks, not the max.
Yeah. That's usually how the guidelines go too. With like fiber, we have guidelines that I also think should probably be adjusted where it's like women should get 25 grams of fiber per day. Men should get 38. That's a bare minimum. I mean, there's one study in particular that looked at people in rural populations. So they're around more farm and land. They were eating around 50 to 120 grams of fiber per day. And they had higher amounts of something called butyrate, which helps with lowering inflammation and improving your immune system and all that. So we're finding that the more fiber, the better. We just have a minimum, but that doesn't mean you can't get higher. It's just, how can you get higher while still tolerating your food and being mindful of other nutrients?
And maybe the American population is just so far from the minimum that they're going easy because they're like, well, let's at least get you to 25 because most of you guys are at 7, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're being too nice on you.
I know.
Is this a common question? True or false, celiac disease is overdiagnosed? I don't think I've ever heard that.
I don't think people even know about celiac disease because I have questions like, what's your take on celiac disease? And I'm like, it's pretty well known as a real thing. We know exactly how to diagnose it.
Yeah. Maybe the more appropriate phrasing is gluten sensitivity.
Yeah.
Not even overdiagnosed because you don't get diagnosed, like over assumed, right? Like, do more people than necessary assume they have a gluten sensitivity?
I think it goes both ways. Like, I think a lot of people will say they have issues with gluten and people won't believe them and they think they're dramatic when it's like, well, there was a point where I felt terrible and then I took out gluten and I feel better. Okay, I don't really think you need any more evidence than that. If you want to do that and you feel better, good. But then there's some people that might take out gluten and start to feel better, but they don't fully feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And they need a more aggressive elimination diet to find the root cause, which is a short-term diet.
Okay. This is one I hear a lot. True or false, the wheat in Europe is safer or is better for gluten-sensitive people than the wheat in the US. What is going on? What's up with the wheat?
Yeah, so a few things. One, Europe gets a lot of their wheat from America, so it's not necessarily true to say that. It really just depends where you are. There are certain areas in Europe that grow softer wheat, and then in America, they might grow harder wheat, and softer wheat just has less of the gluten. But there's so many sources. You're going to any type of restaurant, you don't know where they're getting any of their gluten.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to say that it's in Europe, it's automatically better because there's a lot of places that are getting it from America. But you're on vacation, probably if you're in Europe, you're less stressed. You're walking.
I was just going to say you're walking
so
more.
much. And I know there's some people that really, they swear by it.
No, I sat on my couch for 8 hours.
I know, but it's like,
no,
you're
you
walking
walked
so far and you're moving slower. And I am always preaching that you need to make sure you're being mindful, sitting down, chewing your food enough, because that impacts your gut health so much. And it's so hard to do that sometimes, especially Americans.
When you're not on vacation.
We're so go, go, go. We don't give ourselves time to eat and relax. And in Europe, they just move slower. They're just
they're not time cycle like we are.
Yeah.
So let's think about the confounding factors here. So maybe it's the wheat, maybe it's a softer wheat. Also, are you less stressed? Are you sleeping way better in your very nice king size hotel room bed with very clean sheets and maybe no children? Are you walking more? Are you not on your phone all the time? Are you not sitting at your desk? Like, let's just shout out vacationing in Europe for health. And we can talk about wheat later.
Just never one thing.
True or false, gluten causes bloating in, let's say, people who don't have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity?
Bloating can come from you eating too fast, you eating something that has a lot of oil in it or grease or is fried. Bloating can come from gluten.
Chewing gum.
Bloating can come from chewing gum. Bloating can come from alcohol, stress, not sleeping well, carbonated drinks. It's an endless list of things that can cause bloating. So
maybe it's the gluten. Maybe
yeah, it's false-ish.
Last one for true or false. Gluten increases inflammation and can therefore contribute to chronic inflammatory diseases.
People with certain autoimmune conditions like celiac disease need to take out gluten because if they eat gluten, it's going to cause inflammation. If you have other autoimmune conditions, you might feel better without gluten because gluten might be triggering for you. But for other people, of the 5 fiber categories, you can eat whole grains even if they have gluten. And if you're getting enough fiber, that can actually lower your inflammation. So it really just is so person dependent.
So let's get the myths out of the way. No, GMOs in wheat don't cause weight gain. Celiac disease isn't overdiagnosed. And yes, many people incorrectly assume they have a gluten sensitivity. And the gluten in Europe isn't necessarily better than the gluten in the US. Chances are, gluten-sensitive Americans on vacation are just walking more and are less stressed than usual, which can help alleviate their symptoms. Whether you have celiac disease or not, at least half of the grains you eat should be whole grains, like oats, quinoa, and brown rice. And if you eat those, you'll get plenty of fiber too. Gluten may cause bloating, but so can stress, eating too fast, or drinking a bubbly beverage with your meal. So take the full context into account before blaming gluten. As always, your nutritional needs are unique to you. So let's talk about whether you should consider an elimination diet and the best gluten-free products out there. Let's talk about the low FODMAP diet. We touched on it in our episode about the gut microbiome, but how would you recommend someone use an elimination diet, short-term, like FODMAP, to see if there's a link between their GI issues and their gluten intake?
Step by step, I would say, let's take out gluten. Do you feel better? Yes or no. If you feel better, we'll keep going. Or if you don't feel better, maybe let's take out dairy and see if you feel better. Or if it's still, we can't figure things out, we might need to do a stricter diet like the low FODMAP diet, which is not about gluten. It's about certain carbohydrates that are fermentable, and fermentation is a good thing for us, but it can cause some gas and GI upset for people. So there's a whole section on the low FODMAP diet that is called fructans. So you take out fructans, and 3 grains that happen to be in the fructans category are wheat, rye, and barley. So there is some crossover with gluten and low FODMAP. So sometimes people might take out gluten and feel better, but they really didn't need to take out all of it. It's like, or they might do the low FODMAP diet and they feel better, but they don't need to take out all fructans. They really just needed to take out the gluten containing grains. The key is to do the diet and then start reintroducing each fermentable carbohydrate and see what's really triggering you versus what might not be triggering you.
The purpose of all of these elimination type diets is for them to be short term and is for them to be like a science experiment of like, what's the variable? And people forget to like finish their science experiment and they just eliminate it all and then never change.
Yeah.
They're like, no, but you could be having so many more things.
Yeah, it's also hard because when I worked in the hospital, every time we had an IBS patient, I would get an order to educate them on the low FODMAP diet. And I like doing it, but I hate doing it because follow-up was really hard. There's a lot less control and it's hard to get people to follow up. So you'll educate them on an elimination diet and then
they get
don't
discharged.
have someone, and then they don't have someone to help them reintroduce it. And when I've worked with people in my own practice, we've started the diet and then you want to do the elimination for around 2 weeks and then you gradually reintroduce each of the FODMAP groups. And it can take a while. Sometimes we go slower, sometimes we go faster, but it takes a long time. It can take, ideally it's like 6 weeks, but sometimes it can take longer. And it's really helpful to have someone helping you check your labs because it can be really, really restrictive and that can lead to further issues and GI issues.
Are there risks to a gluten-free diet if you don't have celiac disease?
I think it can go in a few different ways. I think when you are eliminating something you don't necessarily need to eliminate, it can add to a lot of stress and make you not want to go out to eat and have fun with family and friends. And it's so hard for people with celiac disease to really advocate for themselves. But beyond that too, it can be really difficult for anyone because you avoid certain situations that you are going to have gluten. And if you don't really need to, you might not want to do that. It can cause stress around eating, worry, and just avoiding other foods. But then you're also missing out on certain vitamins and minerals and fiber. And the more I'm always talking about getting more diversity, because the more diverse your ecosystem is, your body is, the better you have at fighting off diseases and overall survival and health. You need diversity.
Well, when we talk about the gut microbiome, right?
Yeah.
Like diversity in types of fiber or diversity in types of plants. Are you on this 30 plants a week kick? Have you counted your plants? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I always do a plant diversity challenge where I have people count. They have to get 50 plant sources a week, which is a lot. But I have them like do that.
Yes.
And I haven't done that in a while, but I usually do like on my page or in my community, we do different challenges. And sometimes it might be the plant diversity challenge.
50.
I just say 50 because I'm so aggressive.
Because you're a fiber freak.
30 grams of fiber is the recommendation, but I say 50. So it's like 30 plants. And I was like, okay, let's do 50. And I just think we should set the bar higher, because then it's usually around, I think when we set something at a certain number, they're going to get less. So that's just how our brains work.
If we encourage more all whole grains, maybe they'll get 50% instead of giving people an out at 50%.
Yeah. So I don't want people to be worried if they're gluten-free that it's really bad, but think about if you need to be gluten-free and just still make sure you are getting diversity from other sources and getting at least the gluten-free grains and just being mindful of it, because there's also a lot of really healthy foods that do have gluten in them, even packaged foods that have gluten in them. And it all comes down to label reading and understanding what you're eating.
Yeah. What do you think are the most common gluten-free substitutes that food manufacturers use instead of something like wheat? Rice, corn?
Yes, they use coconut flour, almond flour, rice, corn, xanthan gums. When you see gums, they add a lot of gums because it can add to the texture. They might use beans like lentils or chickpeas.
Do you have any favorite gluten-free products?
I really like, for pastas, I like the Jovial brand. It's Jovial. I love Siete. They have really good tortillas. Purely Elizabeth has gluten-free. Glutino pretzels I really like. I'm not gluten-free, but I sometimes am, I guess. Sometimes like gluten-free pretzels, I just think taste better, so I get them. And certain breads, like there's this brand of bread that I like called Carbonate. They have gluten-containing bread, but then they also have a gluten-free one. And I mean, the gluten-containing bread has like 7 grams of fiber per slice, but then the gluten-free one, they added in fiber too, so it has even more fiber. But
that's a lot for a slice of bread.
Yeah, it's a lot. So it depends on your tolerance with fiber, but I like it. There's Simple Mills, and then Ancient Harvest is a good brand. There's a lot, honestly.
So I think that if someone's in the grocery store and they're looking at products that are labeled gluten-free, it may be a little bit of sticker shock because they look more expensive than the average loaf of bread, let's say, or the average tortilla. But we also had a good conversation about trying to limit your intake of ultra-processed foods. So go get beans, right? Like you cannot argue about the cost of beans. Go look at in-season fruits or vegetables, bananas, apples, etc. So I would say save the ultra-processed foods that are gluten-free for the things that you really miss in your diet. Like, gosh, I really would love a piece of bread, or I really miss crackers. Then yeah, go buy those in a gluten-free package, and that's cool. But the rest of your diet can be incredibly healthy and not expensive if we're talking about whole food, plant-based, which is kind of the top tier, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it is more expensive for a company to even have the gluten-free label on it. So one is making it easier for you so you don't have to read the label as much. So it is going to naturally be more expensive. But the more you learn what grains contain gluten, and there's different like scanners out there, like the gluten-free scanner, the Fig app, there's certain resources, but it's definitely not something that just happens overnight. It's always going to be more challenging in the beginning to find what you even like that's gluten-free, if you need to be gluten-free, and then what you can afford. And, different grocery stores are also setting different prices. So,
because you are the queen of fiber, I actually want to ask you the question, how do we increase our fiber without being miserable, right? So like we're pushing fiber here, everyone. Like we need you to get more. America needs more. Let's eat some fiber. But I think that also freaks people out that they're not going to feel all that great. Do you have like a number or a way that you help people significantly increase their fiber without being miserable?
So at every meal, thinking about what can I add to my plate that has fiber in it. It doesn't need to be a huge amount. Even just a small amount is good. So maybe you add just a sprinkle of chia seeds to something and you add a couple colored vegetables. You want to go slow and steady because I think the number freaks people out. So they want to just have 3 tablespoons of chia seeds just because the serving size says 3 tablespoons. That's a lot of fiber that if you're not used to it, it could hurt your stomach. So trying to do small amounts of different fibers can be helpful in your journey to tolerating fiber and getting enough fiber in, and not relying solely on some of the foods that have added fiber in them. So sometimes people might eat like a mission tortilla, which is great. It has fiber in it, but it has like 30 grams of fiber in it. And if your body's not used to it, you might have GI upset, but remembering that that's just one type of fiber. So the more fiber diversity you get, the better you're going to tolerate it. And you just don't need to do it overnight. You just, you can track your food, see where you're at, and just go slowly. But even beyond tracking, just working on, can I add to my plate? Can I get more diversity rather than, oh, I have to get a certain amount of fiber. That's really good for me. You don't need to stress about it. You can take your time. And even if you're having some GI upset, it's okay to have a few days with lower fiber and then just build your way back up. But diversity is always going to help with tolerance too.
Yeah, I like that. You don't have to just like go take a fiber supplement or eat a 30-gram of fiber containing tortilla.
Yeah,
scary.
Exactly.
Gabrielle, I want to thank you for your time today and bringing all of your fiber knowledge to our audience. You are the queen. So thanks for being on Nutrition.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun. Good to meet you.
An elimination diet like FODMAP is like your own little experiment. That means you should take it seriously and be careful not to over-restrict. An elimination diet should only be a short-term situation, so remove and reintroduce individual food groups slowly and keep notes on which groups trigger your symptoms. Whether you're gluten-free or gluten for life, you should still be eating a diversity of whole grains and whole foods. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll be flying that fiber freak flag too. That's all for this episode. But if you have a follow-up question, leave us a voicemail at 507-538-6272. We'll answer it in a future episode. For more On Nutrition episodes and resources, check us out online at mayoclinic.org/onnutrition. And if you found this show helpful, please subscribe and make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. It really helps others find our show. Thanks for listening. And until next time, eat well and be well.